Okay, this is Lucien Maxwell. We're going to be seeing his grave in a few minutes. Largest landowner in the United States at that time, and purchased the farm for $5,000. And we'll get a display of his land holdings in a minute. This is a very old picture of him. I guess this is a better picture of him. He was the father of Pete Maxwell, and Pete Maxwell had a daughter named Paulita Maxwell. Paulita Maxwell was Billy the Kid's love of his life. And he would die in her bedroom, although some people claim that he died in Pete Maxwell's bedroom, which is questionable because Pete Maxwell one time fired Pat Garrett for catching him stealing his cattle when he was paid to guard it. More items. Excuse me, sure. And here's some paintings of Billy the Kid. His life is a mystery. Some people claim that his original name was Henry McCarty. Other people claim that his original name was William Henry McCarty. And the reason why it was believed he was called Henry is because the second husband of his mother was named, his first name was William. And just to avoid confusion in the household, she called William Henry McCarty Henry by his middle name, and her husband William, just so they wouldn't be confused when she called them out. At least that's how the story goes anyway. And of course, this is a brief biography on Billy the Kid. It was believed he was a anchor baby from the Irish potato famine in the mid-1800s. His mother married William Antrim in Santa Fe, New Mexico in 1873. That was her second husband. It wasn't known who her first husband really was, or maybe if she had a husband in the first place. There's much mystery as far as where Billy the Kid was born. It was more than likely he was definitely born, at least from what the people who trace it, he was definitely born in New York City, possibly in Brooklyn in the Irish slums. And the big debate as far as what date he was born on based on what street addresses his mother lived at. And one suggested date is in September 1859. The other date suggests November 20th, 1859. From an astrology perspective, it is my opinion that Billy the Kid was born on November 20th because he has all the attributes of a Sagittarius, and I've been studying astrology for 28 years, and I am firmly convinced that Billy the Kid was a Sagittarius. Okay. Billy the Kid and his pals, we're going to be going to their graveyard in a minute. Charlie Beaudry on the left would join up with Billy to become part of what was known as the Regulators in the Lincoln County War. And Tom O'Folliard would join up later. And all three of these people would die in the vicinity of this museum where I'm taking this, in Fort Sumner, New Mexico. Charlie Beaudry would die in an area called Stinking Springs, and Tom O'Folliard would die in Fort Sumner near the entrance, and both were ambushed by Pat Garrett. Pat Garrett apparently convinced, or some people say highly persuaded, two people who worked at Fort Sumner, Jose, well, their last names were Gallegos and Vasquez. They were two Mexican workers. Basically convinced them to let him hide out in the old hospital at Fort Sumner, and Pat Garrett ambushed Tom O'Folliard when he rode into Fort Sumner, hit him straight in the left chest. Garrett was a real good shot with a Winchester. And Charlie Beaudry, he died at Stinking Springs. The story goes that he was wearing a big hat, the same kind of hat that Billy the Kid likes to wear, who Pat Garrett really wanted to get. And when he came outside, Pat Garrett hit him square in the chest. And his famous last words, Charlie Beaudry's famous last words were, "I wish, I wish, I wish." And many people think he was probably saying, "I wish I hadn't worn this hat." Okay, now let's go over here more. Okay, now we come to the wanted posters. And some of these posters I question because, see, here's the thing. Billy the Kid was not given his name, Billy the Kid, until 1880 by a local newspaper. He was just primarily referred to as the Kid. And another thing that's, I see there's a poster of Jesse James here. There supposedly was word that Billy the Kid rode with Jesse James. There is no evidence of that. Jesse James reportedly did want Billy the Kid to ride with him, but the Kid basically believed, you know, rustling livestock and cattle and so forth was one thing, but going on to trains and robbing people was another thing, and he basically told Jesse James no. And let's see, this is Pat Garrett. Pat Garrett, the guy who killed Billy the Kid, Thelma Folliard, and Charlie Beaudry. And one of the big mysteries about Pat Garrett was, how did he kill Billy the Kid? The story goes was that he was in Pete Maxwell's bedroom. Billy the Kid came in saying, "Quien es, quien es?" Who is that? Who is it? Or who's there, excuse me. And modern Western historians don't believe this story. It is believed that he bound and tied Paulita Maxwell, his girlfriend, and waited for Billy to come into the bedroom and then killed him. This seems to be more of his style because Pat Garrett had a reputation for being what was known as a bushwhacker. In other words, he ambushed prey. He did that with buffalo. He was a buffalo hunter. And he did that with people also and was very, very good at it. He knew what he was doing. He was a very good shootist. And his style was to ambush prey and to ambush people. And I kind of believe the story where he bound and tied Paulita Maxwell. Later on in her years, when Paulita Maxwell was asked about it, she absolutely refused to talk about it. And also note that Pat Garrett lasted only 1 year as sheriff of Lincoln County and was reportedly highly disliked by the locals after he shot Billy the Kid. Whereas they had a lot of people who wanted Billy the Kid dead. It may have been the way he did it that they highly disapproved of and were probably mum about. But it's still unknown really exactly how he killed Billy the Kid. He claimed he was in Pete Maxwell's bedroom and he walked in, but like I said, Pat Garrett worked for Pete Maxwell at one time, and Pete Maxwell fired him because he caught him stealing his cattle, so I kind of don't believe that story. Okay, and this was the picture where Pat Garrett claimed he, how he shot Billy the Kid. Again, I questioned this story. Pat Garrett had a history of not being a good gambler, and it was believed that he was killed by a leaseholder. And there's the famous gravestone. And some more artifacts. And let's see. Oh yeah, here's the newspaper. Oh, this I got to get. Eyewitness account of the death of Billy Kid. It's, like I said, I question this. And let's see, this was the reported burial of Billy the Kid. Probably should step back so I get a good shot of it, but I can't back up anymore. I guess I'll just roll it slowly there. Yeah, the Mexican people in the Lincoln County area and the Fort Sumner area loved Billy the Kid. He considered him to be one of them. He spoke Spanish fluently and was a big hit with the local senoritas.